thanks for tuning in. My name is Jason. I've wanted to do this video for quite some time, but haven't just been able to get to it because I've been dealing with a few problems. If you've seen my older videos, I had a spark plug issue on this bike, so spent a lot of time kind of trying to diagnose that, and kind of kept me busy and off the grid, so to speak. Ever since I bought this bike, I've wanted to do a video on the transition from a Sportster to the Low Rider S, my 2020 beautiful Softail Low Rider S. So yeah, that's what we have on the agenda for today. I don't really know how I'm gonna break this video down, but I thought about it in terms of questions that I had in my mind when I was riding a Sportster and thinking about switching over to the Low Rider S. And I'll be completely transparent with you, I'm one of those idiots that never test rode a Low Rider S. I just kind of bought it on the spot. I knew that this was going to be the bike I wanted for the long run. When I saw this bike come up on the market, I just snatched it up because I knew this is what I wanted. So a long-winded way of saying I never test rode this, and even before I had a chance to ride this thing, like, I had questions about it, from what is the ride going to be like? Is it going to be too heavy? How comfortable is it? What's the power like? Is it too much to handle for a new rider like myself? You know, I still have only like 2.5 years under my belt, and so I figured maybe I can kind of go through that and explain what I've noticed, so that maybe those who are coming from a Sportster into the Softail, whether it's a Low Rider S or a Street Bob, can kind of talk to it from a Sportster or like a small displacement bike point of view. So first, the power is just great. I had an Iron 83, didn't feel like it had quite enough power for all the kind of stuff I wanted to do, so I modified it to a 1250. But the Low Rider S obviously is a higher displacement at around 1900 cc's, and the power is amazing, and specifically just the torque. This thing pulls at every gear. This does not leave me wanting for more. You know, that was in 4th gear, and you know, it just has a pull, and if you're not too careful, I mean, it could really kind of throw you off. There's definitely been times when I've been kind of like kicked back, like, whoa, you know, this has a lot more juice than I thought. So yeah, definitely enough power for any sort of situation. Highway specifically, that extra power really helps. Even with my Sportster converted to a 1250, I thought that was enough power, but this is just like icing on the cake for me. It's nice to know that you have the power, that the power is there when you need it. Get out of sketchy situations, or, you know, if you just need to catch up to a group or what have you. So yeah, definitely enough power. I would say if you have some experience, it's not going to be too difficult of a transition. But if you've never ridden a motorcycle before and you're thinking about coming into a Low Rider S, I would advise against that. If you're dead set on it, you know, definitely go, by all means, go for it. But it does have a lot more power than I think a new rider can handle. Yeah, we talked about power, you know, definitely noticed a difference in power. That comes in handy on the highway. Speaking of the highway, the next thing that I noticed, or the next thing that I was really looking for in this Softail model, is that 6th gear, man. Wow, that is a game changer. To be able to cruise on the highway on 6th gear and be comfortable and not have the engine screaming at you, that is a blessing. And I've said this over and over again, as I'm, you know, kind of growing and maturing as a rider, I am thinking about longer trips, and I have that kind of in mind. And so having a 6th gear, it's kind of necessary. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is just comfort. I knew that the Softail was going to be more comfortable than a Sportster. Sportster just being so narrow, I felt like all the pressure was just kind of like all on my spine. And with a wider frame, with a wider bike, I knew that pressure, that weight pressure, was going to be distributed a little bit more evenly. So I knew in that sense that it was going to be more comfortable in longer trips. But I also knew that it was going to be a heavier bike. The Sportster is about, I'm rounding here, but like, it's about 500 pounds, give or take. And this Softail Low Rider S is just shy of 700. I think about 680, 670, something like that. So that's a massive difference. That's almost a 50% increase. This guy. Yeah, like I said, it's a 50% increase. You know, there's been times where the lightweight feature of a Sportster came in real handy, you know. There's been times where I almost leaned over or laid the bike down and I was able to catch myself. So it was difficult, but I was able to do it. I doubt I'm going to be able to do that with this bike, so I'm glad that I have these like little crash bars here, but that's another thing to think about. It's a double-edged sword is what I'm trying to say. Yes, it's more comfortable, but it's wider. It's harder for me to I can't even flat foot this bike, which is not a big deal, but for those who are newer, that might decrease your level of confidence. Although it is a very nimble bike, it's not as skinny and like narrow as a Sportster. What I really liked about the Sportster is that it can just, you can maneuver it just about anywhere. It is more comfortable in longer trips, but it does take a little bit more effort to maneuver, especially in, you know, slow speed situations. Something to think about. I am getting used to it. It took me a while to kind of get used to the weight, the slow speed maneuvers, the U-turns. I've been practicing a little bit here and there. It's the name of the game. You're going for a bigger bike. You know, you're prioritizing longer trips. Therefore, it's going to be heavier. It's going to be hard to maneuver. That's just, it is what it is. It is still a very, very nimble bike, which leads me to my next point, like the handling. I thought the Sportster was going to be a better handling bike. I don't know why I thought that. This bike, man, the inverted forks, the dual disc brakes, it is just a beast on the curves. When you get this bike up to speed, you know, all of that weight just kind of disappears. And it feels very flickable, and it wants to dive into turns like so much that it kind of caught me off guard here and there. So yeah, the handling is great on the Low Rider S. Huge improvement over the Sportster. The next thing I wanted to talk about, you know, kind of related to comfort. I kind of touched upon this, but I'm not able to flat foot this bike. Luckily for me, I've kind of gotten used to that at this point. Being able to flat foot a bike is a huge selling point for a lot of people, for short riders like myself. So yeah, when I'm riding through the city and stuff, it's not as convenient as a Sportster, because I could flat foot a Sportster very easily. Look at this, it's just effortless. And just like that, we're up to 60. So yeah, we've talked about power, we talked about comfort, we talked about handling. You know, obviously, if you're going to talk about, you know, the differences in the bikes, you have price. This is almost twice as much as a Sportster. MSRP on these bikes are $18,000. So that is something else to think about. Surprisingly, the insurance wasn't more for the Low Rider S. I'm not quite sure why. So that is another big difference between a Sportster, the cost, and not just the cost, but the accessories that come with it. Everything just costs more on the Softail. I'm trying to think, like the seats, you know, the Saddleman step-up seat is like almost 500 bucks. And on top of that, there's like a 6-month wait for them. Risers cost me $430. The blackout rings for these gauges, I think they're like 120 from Harley. Luckily, I got these somewhere else, which was cheaper. But still, just everything costs more on a Low Rider S. The number one question that I've gotten on Instagram after I made the switch has been, I bet you miss the Sportster, don't you? I don't know how to answer that question. Yeah, I miss my Sportster because I had a sentimental attachment to it. It was my first Harley, had a lot of good memories on that bike, but I had to let it go. Do I miss it? Yes. But I think really what they're trying to say is like, do you regret that decision? My answer to that is, I don't regret it. For me, that Sportster was just a fantastic starter bike. It was easy to learn on. I had tons of fun on that bike. But as you progress as a rider, you might want different things. You might look for different things. You know, that's kind of the stage I'm in. So do I have any regrets? I do not. I love this Low Rider S. It is such a fantastic bike. When I switched over from the Sportster to the Low Rider S, it was like just very different worlds. And maybe it's because the Sportster hasn't been updated for quite some time, but man, I just felt like I was on a completely different machine. I don't know, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but in Terminator 2, you know how Arnold is like an older version of the Terminator, and then you got this new guy, bad Terminator, that's shapeshifted into anything, and that dude was badass. Of course, Arnold wins in the end, as he always does. So maybe it's not the perfect analogy, but there's no winner and loser here. The Sportster is a great bike for some. The Low Rider S is a better bike for others. It's just really all about what you are looking for in the bike. If there's one thing that I miss about the Sportster, is the ability to just customize it however you want, and it's like cheap to customize, you know, in relative terms. With this Low Rider S, I mean, maybe it's because it's a newer platform, but there aren't as many options, so a lot of people just kind of like club it out, which I think is probably the best looking option on the Low Rider S, but still, it'd be nice to have some variety. I'm blabbering, guys. I think that means I'm kind of at the end of the video. I will say though, I mean, there have been some learning curves, but it's been a pleasure. All the things that I've wanted in my next bike, I got with this Low Rider S. The looks, the wind protection, the ease of riding on the highway, the power is all there. You know, it handles amazing. It's a fantastic, fantastic bike. So if anybody's looking at upgrading to a Low Rider S, I highly recommend it. If you can afford it, great. If you can afford both, that's even better. So yeah, that's where I'm gonna leave the video, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. I love this bike. Thank you all for supporting the channel. I'm gonna skate out of here. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you all had fun. I know I did. But until next video, I'll see you all later. Peace out.